Hi guys, thanks for joining us again this week after a little break. We are back with In For You. Every week we jump on here at the same time to give 45 minutes of help to someone normally in the hot seat. This week we're doing, because we've had a break and we're coming back, we're taking a slightly different tack this week where we're doing a general show with 3 specific topics and then answering questions that people have got from the side here. So every week, myself, Stephen Caggiano, and the lovely Christy jump on. This week, we're fortunate enough to be joined by J.S. Gilbert over here. Thank you very much for jumping in. A very pleasant, unexpected surprise for me. And thanks for calling him in, Stephen. So this week, we're going to let Christy lead. She's got 3 topics that we're going to talk around this week. So we're going to keep it tight to the 45 minutes as well, so that anyone who wants to come and watch the replay, they know it's only 45 minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Christy to kick us off with what the first topic is.
Yes, so welcome everybody. The first topic we have to talk about is how is the best way for us to be finding people on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, on these social media platforms. What's the best way to connect with people, find people, and get the word out, get connected?
I'm going to let Stephen kick off with this one because I'm just updating like 3 other platforms at the same time. So Stephen, if you want to answer this one first, you'll buy me 2 more minutes to finish what I'm doing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, first I'll give you the hardcore answer, and then I'll give you a pedestrian answer. What I do for clients when I need to start a new Twitter account for a brand launch is I'll go on Twitter and I'll do an advanced search in a specific space. Let's say I've got a sporting good product that's coming out. I'm going to search words that deal around sports, football, baseball, basketball, etc. Then I'm going to look for influencers in that space. Then I'm going to look at who they're following, measure the probability of them following back because of their behavior, and I'm going to follow those people with a high probability of following back on my new brand account. The pedestrian answer is, if you're an average Joe coming on the scene and you want to grow a Twitter following, is to get into some Twitter chats. Follow people that are engaging. Follow people that you can talk to. Do it slow, do it organically, and base it on the conversation. Plain and simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to expand a little bit on that whilst Stephen grabs a drink there, is that within that advanced Twitter search, a lot of people don't realize that within that advanced Twitter search, you can nail right down to a specific area. So you can actually do it via kind of geolocation to find people who are specific to your area. So if you're a local business, you can obviously target people in your area. So you can nail right down to that. The advanced search is a little bit harder to find for it's not kind of right there in front of you when you go to Twitter. But if you're doing it from a desktop and you do a standard search, on the top right of the search bit, you actually get more options where you can go into an advanced search. So that's how you find it from the desktop side. Once you get used to how to do that search, you can actually advanced search straight from the search bar by using certain parameters and things, which I will actually be tweeting out in some tweetables afterwards for people if they want to use those to do that. So I'm gonna ask JS to jump in on this. How are you using it? Like, what advice would you give to people?
I mean, I would. There's an infinite amount of advice. I also agree with the Twitter chats. I've met and co-followed a lot of really interesting people because I've been involved with some really nice Twitter chats, and I think that's great. The other thing I would say too is video is incredible, and certainly to use whatever your @ symbol is. So if people don't know, you're at ATW Networking, at Gilbertism, at Make Me a Harp. That seems to be the thing that I see being promoted a lot more now than the www dots as far as marketing is concerned. So it's replacing the URL to a large extent. The other thing, so if you're posting videos up on YouTube or Hulu or wherever you're putting them, make sure that you've got your @ up there. The other thing too is I've met a lot of really good people through Blab, through Periscope, and other live streaming services. So getting involved in terms of Blab to find people that you relate to, that you respect, that is really a great way to go. But I think before that, though, you really need to kind of look, what kind of a business are you, or are you an individual that's looking to learn? What are your primary needs in terms of going out onto the social media space? And that will often dictate the best way to go. I don't advocate just following for following's sake, or building up lists of individuals that you're not going to have interactions with. You really, to me, all of social media is one giant conversation. I'm either trying to start one, jump into one, support one, whatever I can be as far as that's concerned. So I think that's pretty much the advice that I can give, the general advice that I can give on the topic, without knowing what somebody's desires are further.
Absolutely. And that I just want to jump back to that, the point around using handles and stuff. One thing that a lot of people are kind of missing the trick on is, if you're posting on any platform, those people might want to follow you on a different platform. I mean, for us, what we deliver on Blab, what we deliver on Twitter, what we deliver on Snapchat are all very different entities. And so actually saying to people, hey, did you know we do behind the scenes stuff? Like, people quite often say, how do you prepare for a Blab? If anyone's following me on Snapchat, they'll know the exact answer to that, because I posted it just before we went live on Snapchat. So telling people how to find you in other places as well is always a good thing. And I mean, I've just dropped the screenshot that's at the top of our Twitter of our YouTube. On all of our YouTube shows where we're repurposing our Blab. So if you want to watch any of these shows back, you can either watch them on Blab or YouTube for extra discoverability. On our YouTube, the caption actually has all the handles and where you can find us on different platforms. So obviously you might go, oh, cool, I discovered them through YouTube, but I want to join that live. So it tells you where to find it on Blab when it's a live show, or to connect through Twitter to ask the question. So make sure that they make it as visible as possible and help people find you.
I guess if I can add something too, the other thing I would look at is the low-hanging fruit. Go ahead and put your friends, when appropriate, business acquaintances, people that you have that are in your email currently. Go ahead and contact them and say, hey, I've just started a new Twitter account. If you're active on Twitter, I'd love to connect with you there. And that's a great way. I would suggest maybe doing that sort of thing before dumping everybody and most of the social media sites have a way where you can just dump your whole entire list in there. I don't know. I'm not a huge advocate of that. And Steve and I had a discussion yesterday. Neither one of us likes autoresponders or that. I think it's just the more personal you can do it, the more you can make it really seem like I care about you as an individual. I think the better your relationship is going to start and is going to develop. And to that end, I'm a big fan of list building and email in general. I think when you combine that with social media, you have a very powerful attack. Yeah.
I think that's really important, that narrowing down. And it's the same as when you're doing your searches to find new customers. The same with the people you already know, give them the stuff that you know that they're interested in. Every now and then you might say, hey, I'm doing this thing that I don't know if you're interested in, but not constantly sending them everything is a really good tip, I think.
In the social selling space, your automation should lead to conversations. You shouldn't be automating so that you don't have to have conversations. That's kind of backwards. There are a handful of marketers that are spot on, and a handful that they're getting on D&E lists. Do not engage, where influencers in marketing are starting to podcast about brands to avoid because they're automated. I think that's. That's kind of a warning sign. The idea is that you post content, automate that, automate your content going out so that you have the free time to be there and answer questions about it, build conversations around your content. But don't automate conversation. Just don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another thing you can see from the little YouTube thing I did there. Like, I'm in a number of things, and one of the things that I work on at the moment is we do a 30-minute show with Sarah Moore as well, and that is an exact 30-minute show. Shows you exactly how to do one thing. And one of the big topics that we've been touching on recently is about repurposing content to create it so that there's not this overwhelm of how do I create the content, and then how to automate that so that, I mean, it's something you'll hear if you've heard me talking on any of the shows. Is I quite often quote in, because people say, how do you manage everything you're doing? Well, I run 8 brands and my social output takes 2 hours a week, because it's very focused, and I sit down and I do it and curate all that content together, because I can read, pull things through, and I can create graphics and stuff and do it in a couple of hours, because I'm automating that and I've streamlined the process. Obviously, when you start doing it, it's not that quick, and you need to understand that it takes time to get there, but picking the right tools and things. So yeah, definitely for your stuff you're posting out, but always be present as well, so that you're listening to the conversation as well. So even using social listening tools that do stuff, whether it's Google Alerts is a great one, send you stuff in, because people might be talking about you somewhere you don't know about. So listening for yourself and getting those Google Alerts to your email inbox, where you can see what people have been saying, and then you can go and respond accordingly.
I think Vicky Fitch made a great statement here in the comments. She said, use high tech to allow for the high touch of connecting. And I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, the idea, for me, it comes down to a statement Matt Collier made, and I put it on my my LinkedIn profile. It's don't focus on the tools, focus on the connections that the tools help facilitate. And yeah. I'm a firm believer in that. It's it's about the connections. My protocol has typically been Twitter, Skype, close the deal. Now, of course, we've got Blab, where it's Blab, then whatever comes next. Where do you go from here? People are talking about using Blab, monetizing Blab, making Blab a commercially viable product for clients. I'm interested in that ROI model. Once I see that, I'll promote it. I've asked clients to use part of their branding budget to come on Blab, but I have no ROI model from Blab yet. So for me, it's still an unproven tool that I'm happy to use. I have to be here because I'm in the space. But I can't tell you what you're gonna earn from being on Blab.
Yeah.
And I totally went off on a side note because it popped in my head.
Well, it made me think of something which is a side note too. But I was just in answer to that. A long time ago, when everybody was studying the USP, the unique selling proposition, I started getting involved with the UEP, the unique emotional proposition, basically looking at everything being broken down, all analytics being broken down into touch points. And so what you have in a Blab is the ability to really reach out and show people exactly what kind of an idiot and moron and jerk you are, or not. See, so it's entirely.
I hope for the not.
and I'm not above that.
Yeah. So you know what? Some days I'm a moron and some days I'm not. But you know what? I'm not a Russian bot. I'm not like, a troll. I'm a human being that obviously you can communicate with and I'm available. So that's the great tool of something like this. That exactly what Vicky's saying here. I love that. I totally believe in the emotional part of people, and that is how we truly connect. Yeah. And the other thing that I love about this is the fact that it's artificial to the extent that I will be on here with 19-year-olds that I would never really be with in real life for whatever reason, because partially I'm invisible to them. But here, for some reason, I'm not, which is a very cool thing about this. So if you are trying, if you're working in advertising like I do, and you're trying to get into the mindset of people who think differently than you do, what a great place to come and say, hey, I want to know more about you and how you think and how you act and what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and so on and so forth. So the touch points, the turning everything into an emotion, and you can do that all over social media if you go to the effort. It is not. It takes time, and you have to be interested in people to do it. But groups, for example, looking at groups that are in LinkedIn, or you want to find a human part of LinkedIn. I've gotten so much work from people meeting me in groups and then referring me on projects and things. So there is that aspect of it too.
Yeah, that was what I'm going to ask, because a lot of what we've answered in this has been Twitter heavy, but leaning more towards the LinkedIn, the Facebook. Like, how do you grow your pages and your groups that you have on Facebook and in LinkedIn? Like you were saying, I think that's a great idea of connecting through groups on that. But how do you guys feel about Facebook as well?
I'm going to quickly chime in because I know that Stephen's got probably a lot to say on this. I've actually taken a fair amount of time kind of away from Facebook just because I've been concentrating on a lot of other platforms and utilizing those. And I know that I can always come back and draw on Stephen's knowledge for Facebook as well. But there's kind of a number of different ways to do that. And it's finding, so before Stephen tells us how to do it, I'm going to just remind people it's about making the best use of your time. So it's investing the right amount of time into a platform ahead of, so knowing what you're trying to achieve. And then when you go to that platform, making the best use of your time, which Stephen is probably going to tell you all about right now.
Well, that being said, Tristan has a gift for organic growth on Facebook. I don't have the patience for it, nor do I have his talent for that side of things. Facebook for me is all about targeting and remarketing. It's about cutting through the noise, getting down to the nitty-gritty, and getting back to goals, content, and targeting. Three things. Brands can be super friendly and super expressive and really gain viral attention that way, but I focus on an ROI model. On all of my clients have a very specific purpose for being on social media, and it's to generate revenue. I pretty much deviate from anything that's fluff. While there, like I said, unless there's that branding, if my budget is coming out of a client's branding expense, sure, we could spend money on visibility and putting together
Stephen,
great videos and ads.
Goals, content, and targeting. Is that what you're saying?
Goals, content, and targeting. There is nothing else. I mean, if you want to know who's, JS and I had a conversation about this. I'll get back to my point in a second. But yesterday, we were talking about the dark side of live streaming.
There's a dark side?
Yeah.
Well,
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's great for us to look each other in the, as Mr. Fanzo says, the digital eyeball. But there's also an opportunity there for the seasoned con men to really take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah.
And we went through some of our favorite streaming personalities and discussed what we thought was taking place in their world. And there's just way too much fluff, and people are being swept up in it, and we're watching it. And you know what? I'll let JS elaborate on that if he wants, but I'll get back to my point. Anything to add, JS?
I was actually responding back to Vicky about something here, so I caught about 3/4 of what you said there. Not specifically what you're asking me to add to. I apologize.
No worries. It's an extension of our conversation yesterday about fluff, brokers of fluff on live streaming.
Well, yeah, boy. And this is the thing. It's caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. It's always been a statement that's been made, and people often don't take it to heart, but it's very true. For $5,000, I can take an individual, waltz them through social media, and have them look like the Shah of Iran or whatever the heck they want within about a year. And that's just kind of the way that it is. Organically growing advocacy is what I generally try to do with clients and work with them. More importantly, what I do with clients is I believe in what Charlie Munger, who is the number 2 behind Warren Buffett over at Berkshire Hathaway, has to say, and that is pay attention to the inanities. If it doesn't make sense to you, then walk away from it. Life has tons and tons of opportunities. So if you're seeing all these people out there and they've, I've made $15,000 in a day and I'll teach you how, and I can do this and I can do that. You know what? I think that you just ignore those people, walk away from them. There's not a lot of value in following those people. And I like what Brian Kramer says in his book, Shareology. He says, give, get. Recently, he's amended that to give, and sometimes get, because that is how it works. Reciprocity these days isn't automatic, and a lot of times it doesn't happen, and we get pissed off. Hey, I look at what I've done for you, and what. And I think maybe we just have to kind of forget about that, and just realize that if we do the work and we do what we're supposed to be doing. I hate that term, but I don't know what else to say. That we will grow, we will prosper, and we will gain. And we do that by helping others and by paying attention, by listening and giving. And then hopefully a certain percentage of those people will give back, or opportunities will become available to you. But don't take anything for granted, And I have a buddy of mine who passed away has a great story about giving. He got a shirt for his birthday many years ago, and he didn't really like the shirt, but a friend of his who was very poor and couldn't afford clothes loved it, and he gave him the shirt. Well, the individual who had given him the gift got really pissed off for him regifting it. And he said, wait, he gave me something, and I was able to get a tremendous amount of joy by taking what he gave me and giving it to someone else who also got a tremendous amount of joy. Why couldn't he just relish in the fact that his gift made 2 people supremely happy? But this is not how our brains work, and we're not wired to do that. So, sometimes we have to stop and realize that maybe we're not as evolved as we wish we were. I know I got to do that all the time. Anyway.
And I have to say, I appreciate what you said about the giving and how important it is, and stop trying to give to get. Let it happen naturally. It used to be the foundation of how business was done back in the day, and I'll be honest with you, if that philosophy is making a comeback, that makes me very happy.
Yeah.
It's a business practice that my father, being a self-employed small business owner, always instilled in me. And it's something that I try to apply in almost every area of my life. And I just think it's good practice.
Get to goals, content, and targeting. Facebook allows you, through paid ads, to cut through the noise. I love retargeting. I love that you can target on Facebook to the Google Tag Manager. There's so many ad blockers coming out now that really marketers have to incentivize the way they approach the market space, almost in defense of what's becoming popular. Average John Q. Public is getting tired of being served ads. It's plain and simple. So it's now a matter of being relevant, and to do that, you've got to target. I love that Facebook lets you do that. You're not putting your ads in front of people that don't care. You're putting it in front of people that have already expressed an interest. I think, going from a 5% click-through rate with 1% conversion is kind of wasting your time. The spray and pray mentality is, it never worked. But now it's just ridiculous to do. Goals, content, targeting. That's it. That's really all there is to being an online marketer. Goals, content, targeting. And I'll add to that, you could be on Facebook to pick up a date. You've still got your goals, your content, and your targeting. It's relevant no matter what you're doing. Anybody that doesn't speak to that is probably trying to separate you from your hard-earned money.
Absolutely. So let's I think that's a good segue to the next question of how do we feel about organic versus paid? How do we feel about that?
I'm gonna hog the first spot again on this one. I like to jump in. I always do this to Stephen. He's got his mouth open, and I'm like, I'm gonna take it first. So this is something I'm really passionate about because for those of you who don't know, I actually took my own brand in the UK from nothing to 3 million people online with no paid advertising, all through organic. And with that, as with all types of the marketing that we're dealing with now, it's absolutely key within whether it's paid or organic. It's really important to understand how people think, what they're after, like what's motivating and driving the people who are making the decisions, whether they're coming to look at a website or they're looking to buy something, buy a product or a service. It's a phrase I use when I do some of my public speaking is, as soon as you understand what drives and motivates someone, you can make them do anything. So just have a little think about that. So once you understand what drives and motivates someone, you can make them do anything. So the reason we got to that number so quickly and for free was because we completely understood what it was that our target audience wanted, and we delivered it without being pushy about it. So basically we positioned exactly what they wanted in front of them when they wanted it and where they wanted it. So you can do that. And so there is a number of tips and tricks around working with organic and doing that. And so if anyone wants specific help around how you can grow organically, please do reach out afterwards. We're not going to go too in depth because we're keeping it general so we can get through all the questions today. But you can grow organically. There are massive benefits to going through the paid search, especially with platforms like Facebook, where your organic is directly impacted by your paid. So if you're paying, your organic will naturally be slightly higher because you're supporting the platform, so the platform will support you slightly. However, with Twitter, we've had massive engagement. I mean, organically, I don't know if anyone saw the tweet I put out the other day that from one event, we put out one tweet and managed to get 48,000 impressions from one tweet and 1,400 interactions, direct engagements with that tweet. So organic is definitely still alive. It's just understanding how to do it and changing as they change algorithms, working with them. And that's kind of what we do. So Stephen, paid.
Wait, before Stephen goes, I'm going to just say a 15-second thing.
Yep.
Organic may or may not work if you know what you're doing.
Yep.
Paid always works if you know what you're doing. Agree, disagree, Stephen?
Well, I think it's spot on, and that's also why I'm not incentivized to become a master of organic herding. I just can't afford the link clicks. I've got to have very specific people clicking very specific links with very specific calls to action. Having 100 people like or comment on a post that aren't prospects for my clients it's no good. It's noise. I mean, it's organic. It looks good. The vanity metrics are up, but they don't convert. I would rather have less of that and more conversion than, the exciting stuff that comes with, 100 likes on a post. It's just not. It's not relevant to me.
And you're not talking about buying followers for $49 for 10,000, are you?
Well, that's quite the bargain you've got there. Send me the link to that service.
Yeah, well, they're all Russian bots. That's it.
And here's the thing about Russian bots: they never convert. I don't care what kind of content you put in front of them; they never convert.
And I love that. I love what Stephen's saying about how it's really important, regardless of if it's paid advertising or organic, is understanding that to avoid those vanity metrics and move towards what you need to know what it is you're trying to achieve, so that you can then measure it and you can see so that what's converting. I'd rather have 100 people on my Facebook page where I'm converting half of them than like 1 million people where I'm getting no conversions. It's just a vanity metric. So it's really important to stay focused on what it is you're trying to achieve, which is why when we work with people, we start with an end result and work backwards, because it's like you can build a path to the end result, but if you don't know what the end result is, how do you build your path to get there?
And that's it. And again, that comes back to goals, content, and targeting.
Which is what yesterday when I was talking to Stephen, I was interviewing Stephen yesterday for a book that I'm writing, and he kept mentioning that goals, content, targeting. Obviously, I remembered that because I just said that before, but it really is. I kind of want to address free on just a couple of levels, because the mentality of free is something that I struggle with. I'll give you a perfect example of why people seem to be adverse to paying for things. I was speaking to a vice president of marketing for one of the largest email houses out there, and they're almost all email housing services work on a freemium basis. You get a free account, you can put up to 200 names, and you can email them 3 times a month. Well, he had a guy come up to him at AdTech at the booth and said, "Hey, I have a free account with you guys. You give me 200 names and I can email them 3 times a month. The guys over at that booth over there, they'll give me a free account and they'll give me up to 500 names and let me email them 5 times a month. So if you can't match that, I'm going to take my business there."
Yeah.
And so I see this happening, and I'm actually writing a paper now called "When Free Isn't Free Enough." And we seem to have this kind of mentality, which is you have people that clients that come to me and want me to create free viral videos for them, or cheap viral videos, not understanding, what generally goes into in terms of the development and marketing of those kinds of things, but also on a business sense, I believe in paying people what they're worth. And so in my business, I employ attorneys, and attorneys look at contracts before I sign them. And I have people who help me in terms of investments. And I have people that I go to that I talk to about business equipment, and all of these professionals out there that I pay money to, because in the end result, I'm going to get a much better product. I'm going to have a better business. I'm not going to have to worry. Some of the stuff that I have, I would rather just have a top of the line thing, a piece of equipment that I know and I can trust and will get me to do the job, rather than other equipment that may or may not, or whatever. But this is a mentality that I have. And so when I look at using a service or something out there, in my brain, I'm not thinking, oh, is this free or am I going to have to pay for this? Because the bottom line is if I can see the ROI, if I can see the value in it, then I'm going to pay for it. And that's what I'm going to choose to do. So, which is not to say that there isn't a lot of value in terms of the organic aspects of social media, but also they're not an island. It's not like, we're going to cruise out to social media land and we're going to campaign and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Your social media, whatever you're doing there, is connected to everything else that you do. It's all one huge big thing. So I don't know. I kind of was a little all over the place there, I guess, wasn't I? But I hope there was some value in something I just said.
Yeah, so always good value.
Yeah.
You covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. So, so we've got one last question, which is actually going to put us at good timing for today. The big question for most people that are either starting a business, which is extremely important, that not all think about right away, that should, and some that already have an existing business. What platforms should you be choosing to be on? And how do you go about choosing the best platform?
Right off, I like to look at Google Analytics, see what the number 1 and 2 referring platforms are, and build there.
Yeah.
If they're already working for you, go there.
I'm going to take a slightly different tack on this because I kind of specialize in organic. For me, I would specifically go out and do searches through different platforms. So I would take to different platforms, not necessarily jumping in to create on that platform, but go and look at the platforms and see, is my competition here? Is anyone in my industry here? And so to learn from that, because you can obviously learn a lot from your competition, and especially when you've moved over to the paid advertising, you can actually target your competition's customers. So if people are here, it's kind of a social proof that people want to learn here. It does. I mean, just because competition's there doesn't mean it's right. So looking at it, and does it work for them on that platform, and then sculpting and shaping your strategy around that, but also making sure you understand how much time you need to invest in the platform to get those results. And so not going, right, I'm going to jump on 10 platforms to start off. You might be better to start with 2 platforms, do them really well, and then expand out as you have the capability and the time or the extra resources to do it.
On my end, I probably couldn't advise unless I did. And I come from my advertising creative background. We do everything off of a brief. So I have to know who you are. For most enterprise businesses out there, I would say start with Dropbox Enterprise. It's basically like an intranet on steroids. And it gives you a lot of freedom for your company to be able to take it. So, for example, if you're working for Intel India and you have a certain clearance, and there's another guy working for Intel in Palo Alto, you guys can work on the same projects and you can help each other. So, I look at that kind of stuff on the larger scale. Scaling down. Again, it depends. Are you a company? Can you invest? Can you have individuals that are going to be specifically dealing with things like reputation? What's the word? Reputation. Dealing with your reputation online. I'm sorry, I'm having a
reputation management.
Reputation management. Thank you. Or what are your goals? Are you looking to do? Maybe you're doing an Indiegogo campaign, or you're doing a Kickstarter or something like that. And you want to roll out a product line, or you're looking at doing some sort of tutorials or things like that to teach people how your products work. So I don't know. I might recommend YouTube as a channel to start with. It really depends. On the other hand, if you're an individual, small business person, a solopreneur or whatever, I'd say what you should probably do is go out there and at least establish an account on every single platform there is, just so you don't lose your name. And that's the most important thing. And then make sure you have in your description ways that people can contact you and get a hold of you. And and play around with them, because if you don't like a platform, if you don't feel comfortable there, if you're not going to visit it, if you're not going to be active and be either a storyteller or engaged in a conversation, then the idea is you shouldn't be there, period, end of story. Wait until you feel comfortable. I was on Twitter for a real long time before I quote unquote got it. And it didn't hurt. A lot of my stuff right now is not being worked as hard as I'd like to work it. It doesn't really hurt. Just make sure that you're paying attention to people and people know how to find you. And the most important thing isn't about you being able to message out. It's about whether or not you're in a position where you can listen and make sure you are actively listening.
You mentioned right off that people should be looking at their goals when starting a business. What are two other things that people should also be looking at?
Well, I would say it's probably content and then targeting would be the two things.
Right there, buddy. Right there.
So, yeah. And you probably call ATW Networking, I bet you, or Stephen Caggiano can probably help you a lot with this stuff.
I was just going to say, what JS was just saying there about jumping on and the platforms and securing your name. Jenny obviously highlighted this. Her Snap name is different to the others because obviously, unfortunately, somebody's already taken it. So there's a little tool I've dropped on the chat here on Blab. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll read it out for you. It's called Name Checker, NameCheckr.com. You can go there and you can punch in a username and it will show you across various platforms whether or not that is actually taken. So if you're thinking about building a business or building a brand around a certain name, it will tell you which ones are available and which ones are already taken. However,
wow, that's worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah, do you mind throwing that back out and I'll type it out for everybody to see?
Namechecker.com.
Oh, so I've dropped it on the side of here, but it's namechecker.com, NameCheckr.com. Allows you to check across multiple platforms. So when you're launching a brand or a new product, even, you can go and check there and you can punch in at the top and it basically it shows you little icons for the different platforms and tells you tick or cross if they're available or not. And some of them, it will go gray and you think, what's that about? Well, you might think, okay, well, this is the name I want, and it fits the username parameters of some platforms, but not all. So it will tell you if you've made a name that's too long for platforms as well. So thinking about that when you're creating for branding across all different platforms.
It would have been handy to do that. Oops.
There you go.
So yeah, awesome one. So I just want to know if anyone in the chat has any specific questions as well around all the stuff we've talked about, because obviously the reason we're here is to do kind of live help. This week's a little bit of a different format to normal. Like we said, we normally jump someone in the hot seat. And actually, if there's anyone here who'd love to be in the hot seat next week, please do send us a tweet with in for you, the hashtag. So it's IN4YOU. And we'll talk to you about getting you in the hot seat and doing specifics around your business. And obviously, other people can come and watch and can learn for their business around that, but the advice will be specific to that person's business. So please do reach out to myself, Stephen, Christy, or just use the hashtag. And we'd love to get someone in for a specific help session next week. And we appreciate all of your time here. But this week I'm going to let Christy do our wrap up because she's been leading the show and asking the questions. So Christy, over to you to do a quick wrap up. But actually, before Christy does it, guys, do you want to say anything before Christy does our quick wrap up? Last thoughts.
Me? Well, I'm honored you asked me to be on here, and if anything, I prove that you can be completely scatterbrained and succeed in social media.
Awesome. Stephen, final thoughts?
I concur with JS. You know, he's living proof you could be completely scatterbrained and still succeed.
Awesome. With that, over to you, Christy, to do our wrap up.
She probably agrees as well.
No, honestly, every single one of you men are absolutely fabulous. I think you guys have given really great tips today on what we each can do as individuals, as brands, as businesses, to help one another, to help ourselves, really reach out, grow our network, expand, and do what we do best and help others to do what they do best. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you, Stephen, Tristan, JS. Thank you so much. Everybody for your insight. And if you are not already following any of these gentlemen, what is wrong with you? You need to fix that right now. So you can click on their avatar. Apologize for the company over my shoulder. You can click on their avatar. Make sure to follow them here on Blab, but also make sure to click on the little Twitter bird. That will pop open another window, so you can then follow them on Twitter. Make sure you're following them on the other platforms as well. And especially LinkedIn. If you are not following these men on LinkedIn, please do so. And everybody take care. I'm going to pause and stop our recording.